My name is Cheryl, and at 63 years old, I've spent 4 decades building a life with Frank in our Colorado home. Christmas has always been my favorite time, filled with family traditions and warmth. For years, I've hosted our son Daniel and his wife Marissa with open arms and a giving heart. But when Marissa called last month to casually announce that 26 of her relatives would be descending on our home this Christmas, something inside me finally snapped. After years of feeling like an unpaid caterer in my own home, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. If you're watching this from a family gathering, give this video a like and subscribe to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken for granted. I've always been the kind of person who puts others first. It's been my nature since childhood, and it only intensified when I became a mother and then a high school English teacher. For 35 years, I taught teenagers about Shakespeare and essay writing while raising Daniel to be the kind man he is today. When I retired 5 years ago, I thought I'd finally have time for myself and Frank, but somehow that never quite materialized. Christmas has always been special to me. Growing up in a small town in Vermont, the holidays meant hot cocoa, homemade ornaments, and the entire family gathering to celebrate together. When Frank and I got married in 1982, I brought those traditions to our home, determined to create the same magical experience for our family. Frank always said I had a gift for making holidays feel like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Daniel, our only child, grew up surrounded by these warm traditions. He was always a sweet, somewhat quiet boy who excelled academically and made us proud. When he brought Marissa home during his final year of college, I was thrilled. She was studying business administration, seemed ambitious, and had a lovely smile that lit up the room. I remember thinking how fortunate we were to welcome such a charming young woman into our family. The first few Christmases with Marissa were wonderful. She brought a fresh energy to our traditions, even suggesting some new ones that we happily incorporated. She would help me in the kitchen, ask about family recipes, and genuinely seemed interested in being part of our celebrations. Frank and I both adored her, and when Daniel proposed after 2 years of dating, we were overjoyed. But around the 3rd year of their marriage, things began to change subtly. Marissa started arriving later to help with preparations, often glued to her phone instead of engaging with family activities. What began as occasional comments about my cooking or decorations gradually increased in frequency and bluntness. "Cheryl, don't you think those table linens are a bit old-fashioned?" she would say. Or, "I found this amazing new stuffing recipe online that's much healthier than using sausage in yours." At first, I brushed these comments aside, assuming she was just trying to contribute. But as years passed, her criticism became more pointed and her assistance less reliable. Meanwhile, her expectations for what our Christmas gatherings should include grew exponentially. 5 years into their marriage, Marissa began inviting her parents to join us for Christmas without discussing it first. Of course, I welcomed them warmly, adding 2 more place settings and gifts under the tree. The following year, her brother and his wife joined too. By last Christmas, our intimate family gathering had grown to include her parents, brother and his wife, 2 cousins and their spouses, and her elderly grandmother. With each addition, my workload increased, but my role as hostess remained unacknowledged. Frank noticed my exhaustion and offered to help, but there's only so much one person can do when preparing a holiday feast for 15 people. Daniel remained oddly oblivious to the situation, or perhaps he simply avoided confrontation with his increasingly demanding wife. Last February, just 2 months after that exhausting Christmas, I had a health scare that should have been a wake-up call for everyone, myself included. What I thought was just heartburn turned out to be a mild heart attack. My doctor didn't mince words. My blood pressure was too high, and stress was a significant contributing factor. He advised me to make lifestyle changes immediately. Frank was terrified of losing me. He reminded me of all the retirement plans we'd made traveling to Europe, taking an Alaskan cruise, visiting national parks in our new RV. All these dreams had been repeatedly postponed as I catered to everyone else's needs and expectations. "Cheryl, you've spent your whole life taking care of others," Frank said one evening as we sat on our porch watching the sunset. "Maybe it's time to prioritize us for a change." I knew he was right, but old habits die hard. I promised to make changes, but still found myself saying yes when others asked for help, still putting my own needs last. It's a pattern I'd perfected over 6 decades of life. What I didn't realize then was that the coming Christmas would force me to finally confront this lifelong pattern in a way I never expected. The tension between Marissa and me had been building so gradually that I barely noticed it happening. Like water slowly heating to a boil, what began as minor friction evolved into something much more problematic over the years. During our fourth Christmas together, Marissa arrived with a designer table runner and new plate chargers, setting them out without asking me first. "I thought we could update the look a bit," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When my sister Sarah complimented my traditional centerpiece later that evening, Marissa quickly chimed in, "Yes, Cheryl has such classic taste. Some might say old-fashioned, but I think it's sweet." By the fifth Christmas, Marissa was openly reorganizing my kitchen cupboards without permission. "I read about this efficient system in a magazine," she explained while shifting my carefully arranged items. "Your way might have worked in the 80s, but this makes much more sense for a modern kitchen." The sixth year brought more relatives and more criticism. Marissa's parents, originally polite and appreciative guests, began to echo their daughter's behavior. Her mother would trail behind me with a lint roller removing imaginary dust from surfaces I had already cleaned. Her father complained about my choice of wines despite drinking several glasses throughout the evening. I tried addressing the issue with Daniel during a mother-son lunch the following spring. "Honey, I feel like Marissa might be a little uncomfortable with our Christmas traditions. Maybe you two would prefer hosting at your house next year," I suggested gently. Daniel looked startled, as if the thought had never occurred to him. "Mom, Marissa loves coming here. She talks about your Christmas gatherings all the time." His obvious blindness to the situation left me speechless. Was I imagining the whole thing? Was I becoming an overly sensitive old woman? That same year I overheard Marissa on the phone in our guest bathroom. "Yes, we're stuck at Frank and Cheryl's again for Christmas," she was saying. "The food is always bland, but what can you do? It's Daniel's family, so I have to play nice." The words stung, but I never mentioned them to anyone, not even Frank. By last Christmas, with 15 people crammed around our dining table and extended into the living room, Marissa had taken to correcting me in front of everyone. When I mentioned preparing the turkey the way my grandmother had taught me, Marissa laughed. "That's so dangerous, Cheryl. You really shouldn't be giving cooking advice when your methods are so outdated. I'm surprised none of us has gotten food poisoning." The room fell awkwardly silent. My brother-in-law James cleared his throat, while my sister Sarah shot Marissa a glare. Daniel stared at his plate. Only Frank spoke up. "We've been preparing turkey that way for 40 years without incident, Marissa. I think Cheryl knows what she's doing." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I cried in our bathroom with the water running to muffle the sound. Frank found me there and held me close. "This has gotten out of hand, honey. You don't deserve to be treated this way in your own home." My friends had been noticing the change in me too. My best friend Linda, whom I've known since college, confronted me during our weekly coffee date in January. "You look exhausted, Cheryl, and you barely talk about your family anymore. What's going on?" When I finally opened up about the situation, Linda was outraged. "They're taking advantage of your kindness. You're not a hotel manager or a personal chef. You need to set some boundaries before this ruins your health." My sister Sarah was even more direct. After hearing about my heart attack, she drove 6 hours to stay with us for a week, witnessing firsthand how even routine phone calls from Marissa left me anxious and drained. "This isn't just about holidays anymore," she warned me. "This is about your life and well-being. Something has to change." Frank, always my steady support, had grown increasingly frustrated watching me suffer. One evening in late spring, as we looked through photo albums from earlier happier Christmases, he said something that resonated deeply. "You know, Cheryl, we teach people how to treat us. Right now, we're teaching Marissa and Daniel that it's acceptable to treat you like service staff rather than family." His words haunted me especially as summer turned to fall and the cycle began again. Marissa's texts started in September with casual inquiries about our Christmas plans. By October, she was sending links to recipes she wanted me to prepare and suggestions for new decorations I should purchase. Each message chipped away at my spirit a little more, but I continued responding with forced cheerfulness, trapped in my people-pleasing patterns and afraid of damaging my relationship with my only son. I kept hoping Marissa would somehow realize her behavior and change, or that Daniel would finally notice and intervene. But neither happened, and as November approached, I found myself dreading the holidays instead of looking forward to them. The joy had been systematically extracted from my favorite time of year, replaced with anxiety and resentment that I tried desperately to suppress. What I didn't know then was that Marissa was about to push things further than ever before, forcing me to make a decision that would change our family dynamics forever. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon in early November. I was preparing a grocery list for Thanksgiving when my phone rang with Marissa's distinctive ringtone, a sound that had increasingly triggered a knot of anxiety in my stomach. "Hi, Marissa," I answered, trying to keep my voice light. "How are you?" "Great, listen, I wanted to talk to you about Christmas this year," she said, the forced brightness in her tone immediately putting me on alert. "Oh, what about it?" I asked, already bracing myself. "So my cousins from California, Lisa and Tom, are coming to Colorado this year with their kids. And since Aunt Patricia and Uncle Greg heard about it, they want to come too. And then Mom suggested we invite Grandma Helen's sister Martha and her daughter Jenna's family, since they're only a few hours away in Nebraska." My mind struggled to keep up with the rapidly expanding guest list as Marissa continued without pausing for my response. "And since everyone's making the effort to come, I figured we might as well invite my cousins from my dad's side too, Ryan and Stephanie and their families. Oh, and my college roommate Brittany and her husband just moved to Denver, so they'll join us too." I sat down at the kitchen table feeling lightheaded. "Marissa, how many people are we talking about here?" "Let's see." She paused briefly. "My parents, brother and his wife, Lisa and Tom and their 3 kids, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Greg, Martha, and Jenna's family. That's 4 more, Ryan and Stephanie, each have spouses and 2 kids, so that's 8 plus Brittany and Mike. So with Daniel and me and you and Frank, it's only 26 people. We'll all fit, right?" 26 people, I repeated, my voice barely audible. "Yes, but don't worry, we can make it work. Your dining room can seat 12, and we can set up tables in the living room for everyone else. The kids can eat at the kitchen island." As she spoke, rearranging my home in her mind without a second thought, something inside me cracked. 20 years of teaching had trained me to maintain composure under stress, but in that moment, I felt a physical sensation of something breaking like a dam, finally giving way after years of increasing pressure. "And for sleeping arrangements," Marissa continued, oblivious to my silence, "my parents can have the guest room and Grandma Helen can use your office with that pull-out sofa. Everyone else can bring air mattresses. The cousins with kids can use the basement. It'll be cozy, but fun." I closed my eyes, picturing my peaceful home overrun with air mattresses, suitcases, and people I barely knew. The mental image of 26 people using our 2.5 bathrooms alone was enough to trigger panic. "What about meals?" I managed to ask. "That's a lot of people to cook for." Marissa laughed dismissively. "Oh, you always make plenty of food. We might need to add a second turkey this year, and maybe more sides. I've been seeing some amazing new recipes on Pinterest that would be perfect." Not once during this entire conversation did Marissa offer to help with cooking, cleaning, or expenses. Not a single acknowledgement of the enormous burden she was casually placing on my shoulders. In her mind, I existed solely to facilitate her vision of a perfect family Christmas, regardless of the cost to my health or happiness. "I'll email you the dietary restrictions later," she added as an afterthought. "Aunt Patricia is gluten-free now, and Tom and Lisa's kids are all dairy-free. Oh, and Ryan's wife is doing keto." When the call finally ended, I sat at my kitchen table in stunned silence, my hands trembling. Frank found me there 20 minutes later, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't even speak when he asked what was wrong, just handed him my phone with the call log displayed. After I managed to explain Marissa's plans between sobs, Frank's expression shifted from concern to anger. I'd rarely seen him truly angry in our 40 years together, but his face flushed as he paced our kitchen. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "This is ridiculous, Cheryl. We're not running a hotel or a restaurant. You just had a heart attack less than a year ago." He knelt beside my chair and took my hands in his. "Remember what the doctor said. Remember what we promised each other, that this year would be different." As his words sank in, I felt a strange mixture of despair and relief. Despair at the impossible situation, relief that Frank understood without me having to explain. "I don't want to cause problems with Daniel," I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. "He's our only child, Frank." Frank's expression softened. "Having boundaries isn't causing problems, sweetheart. It's Marissa who's causing problems by treating you this way, and Daniel is a grown man who's allowing it to happen." We talked for hours that evening, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. About our postponed dreams, about the gradual erosion of joy in our lives, about the fear of confrontation that had kept me trapped in patterns of sacrifice and resentment. As darkness fell outside our kitchen window, Frank said something that changed everything. "What if we weren't here for Christmas at all? What if we finally took that trip to Hawaii we've been talking about for 10 years? The thought was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Could we really do that? Just leave? Daniel would be so hurt, I protested weakly, but even as I said it, another voice in my head whispered, "But what about your hurt? What about your needs? When do those matter?" That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, as if my body recognized the possibility of freedom before my conscious mind could fully accept it. The idea of actually taking a Christmas vacation instead of hosting felt both liberating and terrifying. The morning after Marissa's call, I sat with my coffee at the kitchen table, laptop open, staring at Hawaii resort websites without clicking on anything. "Just looking doesn't commit us to anything," Frank said, refilling my mug. His gentle encouragement helped me start browsing through options, but the guilt remained like a physical weight on my chest. "Maybe I should call my therapist," I said. I'd started seeing Dr. Lewis after my heart attack, mainly focusing on stress management. I hadn't told her much about the family dynamics, always downplaying tensions with Marissa to avoid seeming like a complaining mother-in-law. Dr. Lewis had an opening that afternoon. When I finally shared the full situation, including Marissa's latest demands, her response surprised me. "Cheryl, what you're describing isn't normal family give and take. It sounds like you've been consistently diminished and taken advantage of," she said. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships." "But what about family obligations?" I asked. "Aren't I supposed to be the one who creates these experiences for everyone?" "Who decided that was your permanent role, and at what cost?" she countered. "Your health is literally at stake here. Would you advise a friend in your situation to continue sacrificing their well-being?" That question struck home. If my best friend Linda described the same situation, I would be horrified and urge her to stand up for herself. Why couldn't I grant myself the same compassion? Over the next few days, Frank and I researched senior-friendly vacation packages to Hawaii. We found a beautiful resort on Maui with special Christmas activities accommodation for Frank's knee issues, and even a Christmas dinner option that required no preparation or cleanup. "Look at this," Frank said excitedly, showing me photos of palm trees decorated with lights and Santa arriving by outrigger canoe. We could wake up to the sound of waves instead of 26 people demanding breakfast. The more we explored, the more real it became. Frank called our financial advisor to confirm we could comfortably afford the trip. "We've been saving for retirement for 40 years, Cheryl. If not now, when—" Still, I hesitated about making the actual reservation. What if we just tell Marissa we can't host that many people? Maybe she'll scale back her plans. Frank gave me a skeptical look. "Based on her pattern so far, do you really think she'll respect smaller boundaries if we can't even establish big ones?" He was right. Each year I'd tried setting gentle limits that were consistently ignored. Last year I'd specifically asked for no additional guests beyond immediate family, only to have Marissa arrive with her parents' brother and 2 surprise cousins. I called my sister Sarah for perspective. "Do it," she said without hesitation. "Book the trip right now while I'm on the phone so you can't back out." "But what about family traditions?" I argued weakly. "Traditions are supposed to bring joy, not land you in the hospital," Sarah replied. "Besides, you can create new traditions. One where you actually get to enjoy Christmas too." My friend Linda was equally supportive. "I've watched you get more exhausted and anxious every year," she said. You deserve a break, especially after everything you've given to your family." With their encouragement ringing in my ears, I finally took the plunge. Frank and I booked a 14-day Hawaiian vacation, arriving December 20th and returning January 3rd. The package was non-refundable, a detail Frank insisted on. "So there's no backing out when the guilt trips start," he explained. That evening we sat together on our porch swing, experiencing a strange mix of emotions. Excitement about our trip mingled with anxiety about telling Daniel and Marissa. I still worried about damaging my relationship with my son, while Frank was more concerned about my health. "We need to practice what you're going to say," Frank suggested. "Marissa is skilled at manipulation, and you need to be prepared." We spent hours role-playing different scenarios. Frank played Marissa, throwing every guilt-inducing comment we could imagine my way, while I practiced maintaining boundaries without apologizing. It was harder than I expected, with decades of people-pleasing habits fighting against my new resolve. "Remember, you're not asking permission," Frank coached me. "You're informing them of a decision we've already made." I nodded, repeating the phrases we'd practiced. "We've made plans to be away for Christmas this year. We're happy to lend you the house for your family gathering, but we won't be hosting or preparing meals." The words still felt foreign in my mouth, almost sacrilegious after a lifetime of putting everyone else first. But with each repetition, they became a little more natural, a little more believable. By the time we invited Daniel and Marissa over for dinner the following weekend, the Hawaii trip was paid in full, our flights were booked, and I had even ordered a new swimsuit and beach cover-up. There was no turning back, and somehow that certainty gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. The night before our dinner with Daniel and Marissa, I had a moment of panic. "What if this ruins everything?" I whispered to Frank in bed. "What if Daniel never forgives me?" Frank pulled me close. "If setting a reasonable boundary ruins your relationship with Daniel, then that relationship was already built on sand, not rock. But I believe in our son. He might need time to adjust, but he loves you. Trust that love to be stronger than Marissa's manipulation." I fell asleep clinging to that hope, trying to believe that standing up for myself wouldn't cost me my relationship with my only child. Saturday evening arrived with a sense of impending confrontation that made my stomach churn. I'd prepared Daniel's favorite meal, beef bourguignon, perhaps as a subconscious peace offering. Frank opened a good bottle of wine, while I fussed with table settings, arranging and rearranging the silverware until he gently took my hands. "It's going to be okay," he reassured me. "Remember, we're doing this together." The doorbell rang precisely at 6. Daniel arrived with a bottle of wine and a quick hug for me. Marissa followed, offering an air kiss near my cheek and immediately commenting on my new haircut. "You look different, Cheryl. Did you change your hair? It's very youthful for someone your age." I thanked her for the compliment while Frank took their coats. The tension was palpable as we moved to the living room for appetizers. Daniel seemed to sense something was off, glancing between Frank and me with curiosity. "So, Mom, you sounded serious on the phone. Is everything okay? You're not having health problems again, are you?" His genuine concern touched me. "No, honey, my health is fine. Better than it was, actually. We just have some news we wanted to share with you in person." Marissa was only half listening, scrolling through her phone, until she suddenly looked up. "Oh, before I forget, I wanted to ask if we could rearrange the guest bedrooms for Christmas. My cousin Lisa is bringing her baby, so they'll need the larger guest room with space for a portable crib." This was my opening. I took a deep breath and met Frank's encouraging gaze before turning back to Marissa and Daniel. "Actually, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. Frank and I have made plans to be away this Christmas. We've booked a trip to Hawaii from December 20th through January 3rd. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's fork paused midway to his mouth, while Marissa's expression cycled rapidly from confusion to disbelief. "You're joking, right?" Marissa finally said with a forced laugh. "You can't possibly be going away for Christmas." "We are," Frank confirmed, his voice calm but firm. "It's been booked and paid for, non-refundable." Daniel set down his fork. "Mom, you love Christmas. You've never missed hosting Christmas. What's going on?" I appreciated that his first concern seemed to be for me rather than for the disruption of plans. "I do love Christmas, Daniel, But after my health scare last year, Frank and I realized we've been postponing too many of our own dreams and plans. But what about our family gathering? Marissa interrupted. I've already invited everyone. People are buying plane tickets. You invited 26 people to our home without discussing it with us first. Frank pointed out, his tone still measured, but with an underlying steel I rarely heard. That's not a family gathering, Marissa. That's a small convention. Color rose in Marissa's cheeks. We always spend Christmas here. It's tradition. Traditions can evolve, I said gently. And this year our tradition needs to include taking care of ourselves too. Daniel looked troubled, but thoughtful. I didn't realize you felt this way, Mom. Why didn't you say something sooner? Before I could answer, Marissa cut in sharply. So you're just abandoning family at Christmas. What are we supposed to do now? I'd practiced this moment extensively with Frank, anticipating this exact question. You're welcome to use our home for your gathering. We'll leave a key and instructions for everything, but Frank and I won't be hosting or preparing meals. Marissa's jaw dropped. You expect me to cook for 26 people, to clean up after everyone? The irony of her outrage was not lost on me. That is precisely what you were expecting me to do, Marissa, without even asking if I was willing. That's different. You're the... She trailed off, perhaps realizing what she had been about to say. The what, Marissa? Frank asked quietly. The servant, the unpaid caterer, the hotel manager. Daniel looked increasingly uncomfortable. I'm sure Marissa didn't mean it that way. Then how did she mean it? I asked, finding courage in Frank's support. Because for years now I've felt less like family and more like staff during the holidays. That's ridiculous, Marissa exclaimed. We come here because we love being with you, not because of what you do for us. Then you'll still want to come, even if I'm not cooking and cleaning for everyone, right? I countered. The conversation deteriorated rapidly from there. Marissa's voice rose as she listed all the reasons our decision was selfish and inconsiderate. She brought up past Christmases I'd hosted, portraying them as promises for perpetual servitude rather than gifts freely given. Everyone is expecting the usual Christmas at Frank and Cheryl's. What am I supposed to tell them now? The truth would be nice, Frank suggested, that you invited an army of people to someone else's home without permission, and the homeowners had other plans. Daniel had been quiet for several minutes, looking between us with growing realization. Mom, have you been feeling taken advantage of? I had no idea. His genuine confusion made my heart ache. Had he truly been so blind to the dynamics between Marissa and me? Or had he chosen not to see? Before I could respond gently, Marissa stood abruptly. If you're not here for Christmas, don't expect to be part of our lives going forward. Family shows up for family, especially at the holidays. The ultimatum hung in the air, harsh and unbending. Daniel looked shocked at his wife's words, but remained silent beside her. I felt a moment of panic, old fears rushing back. But then I remembered Dr. Lewis's words about healthy relationships and boundaries. If my relationship with my son could only exist on terms that harmed my well-being, was it truly a relationship worth preserving in its current form? I'm sorry you feel that way, Marissa, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I've shown up for this family for decades, often at great personal cost. This year I need to show up for myself too. Frank reached over and squeezed my hand in silent support. Daniel, say something, Marissa demanded. Tell your parents they're ruining Christmas. My son looked torn, caught between his wife and his parents. I don't know what to say. I wish everyone would calm down so we can discuss this reasonably. There's nothing to discuss, Marissa snapped. Either they cancel their selfish vacation or they're choosing to abandon their family. That's a false choice, Frank said firmly, and it's manipulative to frame it that way. After several more minutes of heated exchanges during which our beef bourguignon grew cold on our plates, Marissa announced they were leaving. Daniel looked apologetically at me as he rose to follow his wife. At the door, he hesitated. Mom, he began, but Marissa pulled him toward the car before he could finish. As their taillights disappeared down our driveway, I collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted, but also experiencing a strange sense of relief. The confrontation I'd dreaded for so long was finally over. I'd stood my ground despite the cost. I'm proud of you, Frank said, sitting beside me and pulling me close. That was incredibly difficult, and you handled it with grace. I wasn't sure if I'd just lost my son or finally found myself. All I knew was that there was no going back to the way things had been for better or worse. The 2 weeks following our dinner confrontation were among the most emotionally turbulent of my life. Marissa maintained a complete silence, not responding to texts or calls. Daniel sent one brief message the next day. "Need some time to think. We'll call soon." That call never came. Word of our abandonment spread quickly through the extended family. My phone lit up with texts from relatives I barely knew, expressing disappointment or outright criticism of our decision. Marissa's mother called once, leaving a voicemail dripping with passive aggression about some people prioritizing beaches over family bonds. Each message stung, but Frank and I stood united. We focused on preparations for our trip, buying lightweight clothing and reef-safe sunscreen, researching excursions and restaurants. Every practical step toward our vacation felt like an act of self-affirmation, a declaration that our needs mattered too. My sister Sarah became my most vocal defender. "The audacity of these people," she fumed during one of our daily calls. "They've treated you like an unpaid event planner for years, and now have the nerve to be offended when you make one decision for yourself." To my surprise, support came from unexpected quarters too. My brother James called one evening, something he rarely did, given our normally communicative but not especially close relationship. "Cheryl, Nancy, and I wanted you to know we think you're doing the right thing," he said, referring to his wife of 30 years. "We've felt the same pressures to host and accommodate everyone, though not to the extreme you've experienced. It's about time someone in this family stood up for reasonable boundaries." His support meant more than I could express, bringing tears to my eyes. "I've been so afraid of being seen as the villain," I admitted. "Anyone who sees you that way has a very warped perspective," James assured me. "Nancy and I are actually considering following your example next year and taking a cruise for the holidays." These conversations helped counterbalance the ongoing silence from Daniel and Marissa, which grew increasingly painful as days passed. I found myself pausing at family photos in our hallway, wondering if I'd irreparably damaged my relationship with my only child. Frank noticed my melancholy one evening as I lingered by a photo of Daniel's college graduation. "He'll come around," Frank said softly. "He's a good kid at heart. He just needs time to separate his thoughts from Marissa's influence." I hoped Frank was right, but the silence was deafening. Meanwhile, our Hawaii preparations continued. Instead of our usual Black Friday shopping for Christmas gifts, we purchased snorkel gear and sun hats. Rather than dragging boxes of decorations from the attic, we organized our suitcases with summer clothes. There was liberation in these simple acts. Each time I would normally have been stressing over guest lists or menu planning, I found myself researching Hawaiian culture or downloading beach reads to my Kindle instead. The constant weight of obligation began to lift, replaced by a tentative excitement. 10 days after the confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Daniel. My hands trembled as I answered. "Mom." His voice sounded strained but not angry. "I've been thinking a lot about our dinner." "I'm listening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I had no idea you felt taken advantage of," he continued. "Looking back at recent Christmases, I can see why you felt that way. Marissa gets carried away sometimes with her plans, and I should have been more aware of how that affected you." His acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for understanding, Daniel. This wasn't an easy decision for me." "Marissa's still really upset," he admitted. "She had to cancel with several relatives because they can't all stay at our apartment, but I told her we needed to respect your decision." It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. The conversation ended on a cautiously positive note, with Daniel promising to call again soon. That evening I sat down and wrote a detailed email to Marissa. Despite her behavior, she was still family, and I wanted to handle this transition with grace. I included instructions for using our home, where to find extra linens, how to operate the oven's self-cleaning function, which neighbors to contact in case of emergency. I included our travel itinerary and hotel information, making it clear we would be reachable if truly needed. I concluded the email with, "While Frank and I won't be hosting this year, we're happy to offer our home for your family gathering. We trust you'll treat it with the same care and respect you'd want others to show your home. Wishing you peaceful holidays." Sending that email felt like the final step in reclaiming my agency. I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was simply choosing a different path this year. There was a distinction there that felt important to maintain both for others and for myself. As our departure date approached, I experienced moments of doubt and waves of guilt, but they were increasingly overshadowed by anticipation. Frank and I studied Hawaiian phrases together in the evenings, laughing at our pronunciation attempts. We watched documentaries about volcanoes and coral reefs. We began counting down days rather than listing tasks. The morning before our departure, as I packed our final items, I realized something surprising. For the first time in decades, I was actually looking forward to Christmas, rather than dreading the work it entailed. That realization alone confirmed we had made the right decision, regardless of the fallout. Christmas morning dawned with gentle sunshine streaming through the curtains of our ocean view room in Maui. Instead of waking to the sounds of house guests stirring and the pressure of preparing breakfast for a crowd, I opened my eyes to the rhythmic sound of waves caressing the shore and the distant call of tropical birds. Frank was already on our private lanai, coffee in hand, watching the early morning beach walkers. He smiled as I joined him, handing me a steaming mug. "Merry Christmas, my love." For a brief moment, melancholy washed over me. This was the first Christmas morning in 38 years that I wouldn't see Daniel. Despite the rightness of our decision, that absence felt like a physical ache. Frank sensed my thoughts. "It's okay to miss him and still be glad we're here," he said softly. "Both can be true at the same time." We spent the morning walking along the beach, collecting small shells and greeting other travelers with festive Mele Kalikimaka wishes. The resort had decorated palm trees with twinkling lights and red bows, creating a uniquely tropical holiday atmosphere that felt both foreign and magical. Around noon, my phone chimed with a text notification. With trepidation, I checked the screen to find a message from Daniel with a photo attached. The picture showed our living room back home in Colorado, decorated for Christmas with Daniel, Marissa, and about a dozen people I recognized as her family members. Everyone was smiling, holding coffee mugs or mimosa glasses. The text read, "Merry Christmas, Mom and Dad. We miss you, but we're managing. Hope Hawaii is beautiful." It wasn't a full apology or reconciliation, but it was an olive branch of sorts. I showed Frank, who nodded approvingly. "That's a good sign. He's acknowledging us even though Marissa probably didn't want him to." I sent back a beach selfie of Frank and me with Santa in an outrigger canoe, wishing them a wonderful day. The exchange was brief but significant, easing some of the guilt I'd been carrying. Throughout the day, we received scattered messages from friends and family wishing us happy holidays. My sister Sarah sent a text that made me laugh out loud. "How does freedom feel? Enjoying my quiet Christmas with just Jim while thinking of you sipping Mai Tais. Pioneering a new family tradition like the badass you are." The Christmas dinner at the resort was a lavish buffet with traditional holiday foods alongside Hawaiian specialties. After years of preparing such meals for others, it felt almost decadent to simply arrive, be seated, and enjoy without any responsibility for the cooking or cleaning. "I could get used to this," Frank said, sampling his third dessert of the evening. "Don't get too used to it." I laughed. "I still enjoy cooking when it's on my terms. Maybe next year we'll host a small gathering again, just immediate family, with clear expectations and boundaries." As Christmas Day drew to a close, we strolled along the shore under stars brighter than I'd ever seen. The warm breeze carried the scent of plumeria and salt water, so different from the pine and cinnamon aromas I associated with Christmas. "Any regrets?" Frank asked as we paused to watch the moonlight dance across the waves. I considered the question seriously. "I regret that it came to this," I answered honestly. "I regret not setting boundaries years ago before resentment built up. But I don't regret being here with you now. This feels like the beginning of something healthier for all of us." Frank squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Cheryl. It took courage to break this pattern, and I think Daniel's message today shows there's hope for a better relationship moving forward." Over the following days, we received updates about the gathering at our house through occasional texts from Daniel. Reading between the lines, it seemed Marissa had discovered that hosting 20-plus people was indeed challenging. Daniel mentioned a plumbing issue with too many showers being taken consecutively, a shortage of clean towels, and the dishwasher running constantly. On December 28th, he sent a more personal message. "I never realized how much work goes into these gatherings. You made it look effortless all these years, Mom. I understand things better now." That acknowledgement meant more than he could possibly know. When we returned home on January 3rd, I braced myself for disaster, but was pleasantly surprised. The house was reasonably clean, with fresh linens on our bed and a vase of flowers on the kitchen counter. A handwritten note from Daniel sat propped against the vase. "Thank you for lending us your home. We have a lot to talk about when you're ready. Love, Daniel." Marissa's name was notably absent from the note, but it was still a promising sign. 2 weeks later, Daniel came over alone for coffee, something he rarely did. We sat at my kitchen table, mugs between us, initially awkward, but gradually warming as conversation flowed. "Marissa's still upset," he admitted, but the experience of hosting everyone was illuminating. 3 different dietary restrictions, constant demands for entertainment, complaints about sleeping arrangements. It was overwhelming. I nodded, careful not to say, "I told you so." "I should have noticed what was happening all these years," he continued. "How Marissa kept adding people without considering the work involved. How you kept accommodating without complaint until your health suffered." "I should have spoken up sooner," I acknowledged. Letting resentment build wasn't fair to anyone, including myself. Daniel looked down at his coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about patterns in relationships, about how I've always been the peacekeeper, avoiding conflict like Dad tends to do." He glanced up with a small smile, though Dad certainly found his voice during that dinner confrontation. "We both did," I agreed. "Sometimes a breaking point is necessary for growth." We talked for nearly 3 hours, moving from the kitchen to the living room as coffee gave way to lunch. Daniel shared insights about his relationship with Marissa that worried me, but also showed his growing self-awareness. I shared more about my health concerns and our postponed retirement dreams. By the time he left, something had shifted between us. Our relationship felt more honest, more adult to adult, rather than mother to child. There was hurt still needing healing, but also new understanding. The reconciliation with Marissa came more slowly and with clearer boundaries. By Valentine's Day, she had progressed from stony silence to polite small talk during family dinners. By Easter, she could manage genuine conversation, though discussions of holidays remained tense. For my part, I maintained the new boundaries I'd established. When Marissa hinted about summer gatherings at our home, I responded with specific, limited offerings rather than open-ended accommodation. "We'd love to host a weekend barbecue," I might say. "We can comfortably seat 12 on the patio." Frank and I also continued prioritizing our own plans and dreams. We booked that long-postponed Alaskan cruise for June and bought the RV we'd been considering for years. We began taking weekend trips to national parks, sending Daniel photos of our adventures with no apology for living our lives fully. As the next Christmas approached, we proposed a new arrangement, a smaller, more intimate gathering with just Daniel, Marissa, and Marissa's parents, with everyone contributing to the meal preparation and cleanup. To my surprise, Marissa agreed without argument. Perhaps her experience hosting had truly been educational. That Christmas dinner, as we sat around a table bearing dishes prepared by each of us, Marissa raised her glass in an unexpected toast. "To Cheryl, who taught me that standing up for yourself doesn't mean loving others less. It means loving yourself enough." The words brought tears to my eyes, representing healing I hadn't dared to hope for a year earlier. Later, as Frank and I prepared for bed, he wrapped his arms around me. "What a difference a year makes," he murmured against my hair. Indeed, by setting boundaries that initially felt terrifying, I'd created space for more authentic relationships with my son and daughter-in-law. By prioritizing my own well-being, I'd actually improved my capacity to be present for those I loved. The most profound lesson I learned through this journey was that true generosity flows from fullness, not depletion. When we allow ourselves to become empty vessels, continually giving without replenishment, we have nothing meaningful left to offer. But when we honor our own needs and limitations, we can give freely from a place of genuine love, rather than obligation or resentment. If you've ever found yourself caught in patterns of people-pleasing or struggling with boundaries, especially with family, I hope my story offers some encouragement. It's never too late to change the dynamics in your relationships. It's never too late to stand up for yourself with love and dignity. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their well-being too. Remember, taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own needs alongside the needs of those you love.